Okay, so we have our crosshair that is displayed on our screen, and I want to make this crosshair more interactable. So I want to create functionality that when I look at anything, crosshair is not doing anything, but when I look at something that we can interact with, I want to tell the player that we can interact with this thing that we're looking at. So we will change the crosshair to something different. And that's what we will do in this video. So the first thing that we need is an image of the crosshair that we want to change to when we look at something that we interact with. And I will give you this folder with everything that we will use in this course. And as you can see, we have this interaction crosshair PNG. So we can go to content drawer, we can go to UI and create new folder for images. And inside that images folder, we can just grab this icon, move it here, close this folder, and you can see we have this interaction crosshair. If you open it up, it is just a basic, like a hand. I don't know, I just thought it will look great in interaction system. Of course, if you want to, you can use anything else. If you have your own icons, feel free to use them, but I will just go with this with this hand. So the first thing that we need to do is go back to our main UI widget blueprint, and I will just collapse this default crosshair because now I want to add a second crosshair because we will just hide and unhide this interaction crosshair. We won't change anything with this crosshair. We will just hide and unhide this second crosshair. So let's search for a size box again, move it here. And same thing as with the previous one, let's anchor this to the center. Let's make alignment 0.5 and 0.5. And let's set its position to 0, 0. So it is exactly in the center. Now for the size, I will go with something like 25 and 25. So it will be a little bit bigger than our normal crosshair. And let's rename this to interaction crosshair. And now all we need is an image inside. Oh, image. Let's move this image inside this box. And now we can select our image, interaction crosshair, and it looks like that. And I think it looks pretty cool. So we can test this when we play. This is how it will actually look. If I make this a little bit bigger, you can see this is the interaction crosshair. This is how it will look. Obviously, you can play around with the size and all of that, but I think this looks pretty nice. So we need to hide this crosshair. But if you hide it inside this main UI, if you press play, it is still visible. Why is that? We need to click on this interaction crosshair, and in details, we need to search for visible. And here we need to change this to hidden. And now if we press play, we can't see it. So I want to unhide this crosshair whenever we look at something that we can interact with. And we will do that obviously inside BP player with our interaction trace right here. So how we can do that? It is pretty simple. All we need to do is grab our main UI reference. And now to get this default crosshair, we need to make sure it is a variable. And same with our interaction crosshair, we need to make sure it is a variable. Let's compile, save, and let's go back to BP player. We can actually close this BPI interaction, we don't need that. So let's just get default crosshair. You can see we can get default crosshair. So if we look at something that we can interact with, we can set visibility of that crosshair to hidden. Because we want to hide our default crosshair, we want to show our interaction crosshair. Let's see if this works. Let's play, and when I look at this cube, this crosshair should disappear, and it did disappear. Okay. We can also just set the debug to none. We don't need that interaction trace to be visible. So this is working, but if we look away, the crosshair is not appearing, so we need to change that. I will duplicate this code, and I will change this to not hit testable. So this not hit testable self and children basically means that this entire size box will just be displayed. It will just be visible. We won't later, if we will add a pause screen, for example, we will show our crosshair. We won't be able to click on this crosshair or do anything with it. So we want this to not hit testable. And if this is false, So it does not contain any interaction trace. We want to show the crosshair once again. And you can see the crosshair disappearing. But we have a little issue. And if we are looking at something that we can interact with and we just go back, this crosshair is not appearing because we're not looking at anything that does not have this interaction crosshair. So this code is not firing. That's why we need to also plug this value, this pin right here. So when we are not looking at anything, this crosshair should also be showing up. So now this should work, and it is working perfectly fine. So now let's just show the other crosshair. To do that, we can duplicate this. Same with this, but we actually need to change this to interaction crosshair. Get interaction crosshair, and then plug this into target. Same here. We need this interaction crosshair. All right, let's plug this in, and we want to set it to not hit testable here, and here we want to hide it. Let's compile, save, and let's see how this works. We have our crosshair at the center of our screen, our default crosshair, and when I look at the floor, nothing's happening. I look at the sky, nothing's happening. But when I look at something that we can interact with, our crosshair changes to this little icon. So that's how we know we can interact with the thing that we're looking at. It will be really useful later when we will create some drawers, doors, and everything that we can interact with. We will just know that we can interact with these things. And you can see it works perfectly.